under current law, if I'm running for state representative, and I have a committee called Jeremy Moss for state representative, and I call up my friend Adam Zemke, what is the maximum amount I can ask Adam Zemke to donate to my campaign for state representative?
$1,000.
Okay, so $1,000. So my attorney creates an IEC called Jeremy Moss Super PAC. On that same phone call with Adam Zemke, can I ask him for $1,000 for the Jeremy Moss Super PAC?
Well, first,
No, I mean, yes or no. Can I ask him for $1,000 for the Jeremy Moss Super PAC?
Are you talking to him about your CTE in the same conversation?
I mean, I could be talking to him about my CT in the same conversation, or I could hang up and call him right back. On the same day,
if I could...
on the same day, can I ask him for $1,000 for Jeremy Moss Super PAC?
Well, I'll say this.
It's a yes or a no.
Okay, hold on, Representative. I am not a campaign finance attorney. I will tell you that I would suggest, my advice to you would be to not have that same conversation on the same phone call, but would you be able to solicit money for the Super PAC? Yes, you would be able to.
Can I ask him for $50,000 for the Jeremy Moss Super PAC?
Well, first of all, is understand that this legislation prohibits single candidate super PACs. So the scenario that you described couldn't exist because it would have to
It could be called Jeremy Moss Super PAC, and my attorney can administer it. I mean, show me in the legislation where my attorney cannot create Jeremy Moss Super PAC. Can I ask Adam Zemke for $1 million for my Super PAC under this law that you're proposing here?
The bill does not or prohibits the creation of single candidate super PACs.
Well, I'll help you out, Senator. I can ask him for $1 million. There are campaign limits that I can solicit somebody for my candidate committee. But on the same day, in the same phone call, I can say, all right, you've reached your $1,000 limit. Can you give me all of the money that you'd like to give me beyond that limit for the Jeremy Moss Super PAC that's administered by my campaign attorney? And that's the problem that a lot of us have with this legislation. We have campaign contribution limits for our candidate committees, and those have been upheld by the Supreme Court. Citizens United has nothing to do with individual campaign contribution limits. What Citizens United does is it upholds that these independent committees can accept unlimited funds. But in Justice Kennedy's decision, he wants them to be just that, independent of the candidate. I see nothing in this legislation that creates that independence. If I can call up Adam Zemke and get up to the campaign limit on my candidate committee, but then in the same phone call, I can ask him for all of his money to go to my Super PAC that my campaign attorney is in charge of.
Representative, this is something that you could do today. We do not have to pass SB 335
So
and
let's not do
336.
that. Let's actually create campaign,
But this is, but Representative,
create
you have to
an infrastructure that prevents that from happening.
Representative, you have to understand that this is currently the law of the land. The United States Supreme Court has created this to be the law of the land. We are codifying this into state law.
And so, you know, you're making kind of this philosophical argument, and I want to bring it back to the policy level. And on the policy level, Citizens United does not give states permission to go ahead and allow candidates to coordinate so heavily with an independent committee. They're called independent
Coordination is
committees because they're
prohibited in this bill.
independent from candidates. And so I don't see a policy argument for this, because we are basically blowing up any limit that a candidate can solicit donations. And that is the heart of my concern of this legislation.
Well, Representative Moss, there are felony provisions in the bill. You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars in fines, multiple years in prison if coordination takes place. You're selectively ignoring other aspects of the bill.
But Senator, in my scenario, I haven't committed a felony.
I would have to say that they are not, the Independent Expenditure Committee is not allowed to give directly to your CTE. And the way that
But my campaign lawyer's in charge of both, my campaign and my independent expenditure
independent expenditure committees are overseen by different rules and different laws to how that money can be used. You, sir, if you use that money for a direct campaign ad or literature or things along those lines, would then be in violation. This separate independent committee has to be independent from your coordination, and someone else, if that is your attorney, cannot coordinate with you on how those monies are used, no matter how, at this point.
It allows me to use the same vendors for my IEC
Yes, but
and
there,
for my candidate
yes,
committee.
Representative, but as the senator said, you are selectively forgetting or not mentioning the fact that you are not allowed by this bill and by current law to coordinate for independent expenditures. That is the current law, and it will maintain so.
So one last comment, and I will wrap up, Mr. Chairman.
Representative, we're gonna ask the Secretary of State to come up for some of these logistic questions.
So
And then you can
I
re-ask your
think the
question.
senator and I, if we both agree that my scenario played out is unethical, wrong, then we should actually make sure that the language of this legislation reflects that. And I think we can work on that and actually tighten this up and make sure that the scenario that I just said doesn't play out. But right now, under the language of this bill, I basically, the campaign limits per candidate have been blown up. And that's a huge problem I have.